From the Voice of America, I'm Ashley Thompson.
And I'm Dan Novak. This program is designed for English learners, so we speak a little slower, and we use words and phrases especially written for people learning English.
On today's program, you will hear stories from Dan Novak and Jill Robbins. Brian Lynn presents this week's Education Report. We close the show with today's Lesson of the Day from John Russell. But first, Dan Novak has this report.
President Joe Biden's administration says it will investigate Chinese-made smart cars as possible security risks. The administration says the cars can gather important information about Americans driving them. The investigation could lead to new regulations. The new rules might prevent China from using the latest technology in cars. Officials say they are concerned that features like driver assistance technology could be used to collect information on Americans. The administration is not proposing to ban imports of Chinese smart cars, but Biden said he is taking steps to protect Americans' data. China's policies could flood our market with its vehicles, posing risks to our national security, Biden said in a statement Thursday. The proposed investigation is the latest action by the Biden administration related to what officials consider the growing threat from China. For example, Biden signed an executive order late last month. It requires the Department of Justice to create new rules to protect government-related data about individuals. Biden and other officials also noted that China has put in place some restrictions on American cars and other foreign vehicles. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo said connected cars are like smartphones on wheels and are a serious national security risk. These vehicles are connected to the internet. They collect huge amounts of sensitive data on the drivers, she told reporters recently. Data collection is not the only concern, she and other officials said. Connected vehicles could also be remotely used or controlled. Raimondo said it's scary to contemplate the cyber risks and espionage risks that these have. A spokesperson for China's foreign ministry said that Biden's actions are discriminatory practices clearly targeted at certain countries. The United States imports few Chinese cars, partly because the U.S. places high taxes on vehicles imported from China. But officials are concerned that taxes are not enough. Some Chinese companies avoid U.S. taxes by setting up factories in countries such as Mexico. The Commerce Department will seek information from the auto industry and the public about the risks and possible steps to reduce them, the administration said. Officials will then develop possible regulations to govern the use of technology in vehicles from China and other countries of concern, including Russia and Iran. We're doing it now before Chinese-manufactured vehicles become widespread in the United States and potentially threaten our privacy and our national security, Raimondo said. Electric vehicles and other cars increasingly use computer technologies to operate navigational tools and to provide driver assistance features. Computers also are used to reduce operating costs and carbon emissions, the administration said. The cars connect to personal devices, other cars, U.S. infrastructure, and their manufacturer. The Biden administration said that creates national security risks. The administration of former President Donald Trump put in place high import taxes on many Chinese products. Biden continued those policies. They have effectively prevented Chinese automakers from entering the U.S. market. But U.S. officials and industry leaders worry that Chinese companies might choose to accept the additional costs as China increases its export push. Chinese car makers also aim to build more vehicles overseas. For example, electric vehicle company BYD announced plans last year for its first European factory in Hungary. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation represents major car makers and technology manufacturers around the world. It said it supports Biden's goal to protect public safety, but also warned of interfering with low-risk exchanges such as safety technologies essential to vehicles on the road today. The European Union is also concerned about rising imports from China. The EU opened a trade investigation last year into Chinese government support for its electric vehicle industry. The investigation is ongoing. I'm Dan Novak.
American educators and lawmakers are calling for complete bans on smartphone use by students in schools. Most U.S. schools already have rules restricting phone use in class, but administrators and teachers say the measures are difficult to enforce. Educators across the United States say students are using their phones to do many things that can distract their attention during class. These include sending messages, gaming, listening to music, watching videos, checking social media, and shopping. Studies in recent years have confirmed high smartphone usage by young people in America. But an increasing number of educators and experts are now beginning to agree that total bans are necessary to solve the problem. Leaders and lawmakers in a growing number of states have also called for complete phone bans or suggested new ways to limit their use in class. James Granger is a science teacher at a Los Angeles, California high school. He recently told the Associated Press, "Students used to have an understanding that you aren't supposed to be on your phone in class. Those days are gone." Granger requires students attending his class to place their phones in a special container. The only solution that works is to physically remove the cell phone from the student, Granger said. The latest state intervention on phones in schools came last month in Utah. Governor Spencer Cox, a Republican, urged all school districts and the Board of Education to remove cell phones from classrooms. He explained that studies had repeatedly shown students do better in school when their phones are not available. The studies, Cox noted, found that learning improves, distractions are decreased, and students are more likely to talk to each other if their phones are taken away. "We just need a space for 6 or 7 hours a day where kids are not tethered to these devices," Cox told reporters. He said his urging, which does not have the force of law, is part of a larger legislative push to protect children from social media harms. Patrick Truman is a high school teacher in Maryland who bans student phone use during class. Cell phone use is out of control, he told the AP. By that, I mean that I cannot control it, even in my own classroom. Truman bought a container that can hold 36 phones, but he says that still, every day, students find ways to hide their phones so they can still use them. Last year, Florida became the first state to strongly restrict phones in schools. A law took effect in July that requires all public schools in the state to ban student cell phone use and block social media services during class. Some school districts went a step further and banned phones for the whole school day. Oklahoma, Vermont, and Kansas also recently introduced what is becoming known as phone-free schools legislation. 2 U.S. Senators, Tom Cotton, an Arkansas Republican, and Tim Kaine, a Virginia Democrat, introduced federal legislation in December. The legislation would require a government study on how phone use by students affects their mental health and school progress. The National Center for Education Statistics reports that nationally 77% of U.S. schools say they currently ban phones for non-school use. Education experts, however, say that number is misleading. That is because it does not mean students are actually following the rules or that all schools are enforcing them. Many educators and experts say that for a school phone ban to work, school administrators must be the ones to enforce it. Some students say such policies take away their autonomy and cut off their main method of communication with family and friends. Opposition has also come from parents who fear they could be cut off from children if there is a school emergency. Kim Whitman is a leader of the Phone-Free Schools movement, a group that advises schools. She told the AP she urges educators to make exceptions for students with special educational and medical needs. I'm Brian Lynn.
Brian Lynn joins me now to talk more about his education report. Hi, Brian. Thanks for joining me.
Sure, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
This week's report dealt with increasing calls by American education officials to completely ban the use of cell phones in schools. Of course, this issue is nothing new. So why is the idea of a total ban receiving new attention now?
So yes, there has been a lot of debate, not only in the U.S., but in countries around the world, about how much, if any, children should be able to use phones during school hours. And I'd say the clear message coming out of this report was that teachers and administrators are really frustrated at the moment because whatever rules they have in place are just not working to solve the problems the phones are causing in the classroom. And enforcement is also difficult. So many teachers feel like a complete ban will have the best chance at succeeding. And it's also much simpler than establishing more complex restrictions.
What were some of the biggest problems the teachers said they are having with their students in class?
One of the biggest was many teachers saying that even though they had banned cell phone use in their own classrooms, many students would simply ignore the rule and hide their phones in a place where they could still use them. And this is one reason a lot of educators in the report said the burden of enforcement has to rest with administrators, because some students just do not listen to the teachers and don't take the bans seriously. So while they may not obey administration rules either, right now teachers are saying they just need more help.
Well, thanks again, Brian, for joining me.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ashley.
Katerina Bezruk, and I teach online in Ukraine.
Someone once said that you should appreciate and enjoy everything that surrounds you. Until the spring of 2022, I did not take these words seriously. It seemed that our cozy and developing town, Popasna, in the Luhansk region, would exist forever. The newly refurbished school, called Lyceum 25, would teach our children and grandchildren. The unity of Heart's Bridge would always be there for lovers. And there would be walks in the forest and swims in the pond. But the war came to our town, a small village with a large railway junction between Luhansk and Donetsk. There was a train repair workshop, a locomotive depot, and a bread factory in town. With its fertile black soil, the area was also home to several agricultural businesses. Why do I use the words was and were? Because everything in Popasna is now gone. And the soil is now black with the residue of bombs and artillery shells. Russian troops attacked Popasna in February and occupied the town on May 8, 2022. The fighting destroyed much of the town, and Russian officials said they would not rebuild Popasna and simply erased it from maps. It was not the first time that Popasna had been occupied. The town suffered under Soviet rule in 1932 to 1933. That was the time the former Soviet Union government's policy led to the deaths of 416 people in Popasna. During World War II, the Nazis operated a prison during their occupation of Popasna. The town was heavily damaged, but was rebuilt after the war. Returning businesses included a bakery, food plant, sewing factory, and a dairy. The 1955 rebuilding also brought rail and transport services, a glass factory, 9 schools, 5 libraries, and a stadium. By 1974, Popasna's population was more than 30,000. Having such experience with rebuilding,
in this next report, Mario Ritter Jr. tells us about a recent study that examined the special sounds that whales make. We learn that the creatures have a special voice box that permits them to make sound underwater. Pay careful attention to the verb vibrate. We will talk more about it after the report.
It is one of the loudest sounds in the ocean, the singing of whales. Now, scientists think they have an idea of how baleen whales do it. They say the large air-breathing sea animals use a special voice box that enables them to make sound underwater. Scientists say the discovery is based on a very small study, but it will direct future research into how whales communicate. The new findings are in a study published recently in the scientific publication Nature. Cohen Ellemans of the University of Southern Denmark and other international scientists studied the voice boxes, or larynxes, of 3 dead whales from the beaches of Denmark and Scotland. The 3 were humpback, minke, and sei whales. All 3 are part of the family of baleen whales, a group that includes the blue whale, the largest animal that ever existed on Earth. In the laboratory, the scientists blew air through the voice boxes under controlled conditions to see what tissues might vibrate. They also created computer models of the sei whales' vocalizations and matched them to recordings of similar whales taken in the wild. Whales' ancestors were land animals that moved into the oceans about 50 million years ago. Elemans said the animal's voice box changed over tens of millions of years in order to make sounds underwater. Baleen whales do not have teeth or vocal cords like humans and other mammals. Instead, they have U-shaped tissue in their voice boxes that permits them to breathe a lot of air very quickly. Their voice boxes also contain a large cushion of fat and muscle not seen in other animals. Whales sing by pushing the tissue against the fat and muscle cushion. Elemans said baleen whales depend on the production of sound to communicate in the dark of the deep oceans. For example, humpback females and their calves communicate with each other by voice, and humpback males sing to attract females, he added. Jeremy Goldbogen is a professor of oceans at Stanford University who was not involved in the research. He said, "This is the most comprehensive and significant study to date on how baleen whales vocalize, a long-standing mystery in the field." The whale voice boxes tested were from younger animals, not adult males, who do the singing. Because of that, whale expert Joy Riedenberg said further experiments on adult males are needed to confirm the study's findings. Riedenberg works for the Center for Anatomy and Functional Morphology at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai in New York City. She noted that the research is probably as close as we can get to reproducing how whales sing. Right now, our technology involves sticking a scope into a whale to see what exactly is vibrating, she said. Since you're never going to be able to do that in a wild animal, these experiments are the next best thing. As loud as whales' songs are, the study suggests that whales cannot produce sounds louder than noise from the shipping industry, Elemans said. They're really affected by shipping noise, and it significantly reduces their ability to communicate, he said. There's just no way for them to get louder. Because some whales sing as a mating call, the shipping industry's interference with those songs is a concern, said Michael Noad. He is director of the Center for Marine Science at the University of Queensland in Australia. He also was not part of the nature study. For whale populations that are really dispersed, like the Antarctic blue whales, they might not be able to find mates in a noisy ocean environment, he said. However, whales like humpbacks that gather in big numbers are more likely to ignore such noise pollution. I'm Mario Ritter, Jr.
Before the report, we asked you to pay careful attention to the verb vibrate. Can you remember when you heard it? You heard the verb a couple of times in the report. The first example was this.
In the laboratory, the scientists blew air through the voice boxes under controlled conditions to see what tissues might vibrate.
You also heard the verb in a quote from whale expert Joy Riedenberg. Let's listen to that again.
Right now, our technology involves sticking a scope into a whale to see what exactly is vibrating, she said.
Vibrate means to move back and forth very quickly, often producing sound. We spell vibrate like this: V-I-B-R-A-T-E. You might notice that the two examples we listened to involved different structures. We have might vibrate and is vibrating. In other words, we have the structure modal plus verb, and then we have the progressive form of the verb, is vibrating. The modal might changes the meaning of verbs by expressing possibility or ability. So, if we are talking about a possibility, we could say that whales have tissues that might vibrate. But if we are talking about a certainty, then we could say that whales have tissues that vibrate. In contrast, we use the progressive form of verbs for things that are ongoing. So you might say that scientists have special tools to look inside whales and see which tissues are vibrating. The general idea of this lesson was to explore how one verb might be used in slightly different forms. While the differences we talked about today might seem small, they are really important to understand.
Welcome to Learning English, a daily 30-minute program from the Voice of America. I'm Ashley Thompson.
And I'm Dan Novak. This program is designed for English learners, so we speak a little slower, and we use words and phrases especially written for people learning English.
Today, Dan Friedel has a story on how climate change is set to sharply reduce the incomes of people worldwide over the next 25 years. Brian Lynn presents this week's Technology Report. Finally, we hear the lesson of the day from Andrew Smith and Jill Robbins. But first,
a new study from a German research group says climate change will reduce everyone's income by about 19% over the next 25 years. That would be about $38 trillion per year. But the report warns it could get worse between 25 and 75 years from now if nothing is done soon. The numbers come from a study published in April in the journal Nature. Researchers from Germany's Potsdam Institute for Climate Research, a nonprofit group partly supported by Germany's government, wrote the report. They said, climate change will cause massive economic damages within the next 25 years in almost all countries around the world. Study co-author Leonie Wentz said developed countries such as Germany, the United States, and France would face smaller decreases. Wentz said the researchers projected that people living in those countries will see 11 to 13% less income. The study writers said the greatest economic effect will be felt by people in the least developed nations. They said countries that are least responsible will suffer the most. Max Kotz is the lead author. He said the researchers first estimated what the world's economic growth would be without climate change. They then applied those values to the damage to economies if climate change continues at its current pace. Kotz noted that there will still be economic growth, but it will be 19% lower in most places once the damage of climate change is taken into account. Kotz said most climate scientists have been looking at extreme weather events, such as heat waves, floods, hurricanes, and other large storms. However, he notes the overall impacts are still mainly driven by average warming, overall temperature increases. The U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, said the average world temperature last year was a record. The weather agency said that number was 1.35 degrees Celsius above the average during pre-industrial times, before modern technology. In the U.S., the southeastern and southwestern states, such as New Mexico and Arizona, are estimated to suffer the largest economic effects. In Europe, Spain and Italy are likely to feel the effect more than countries like Denmark and Germany. Areas that are usually cold for most of the year, Canada, Russia, Norway, Finland, and Sweden, will have good results from warming. Kotz notes that the world's poorest countries are also the least prepared to adapt to climate change. Those countries are least responsible for the change, but they will suffer 60% more income loss than wealthy nations. It underlies some of the injustice elements of climate, Kotz said. The study looked at 1,600 areas around the world that are smaller than countries. Kotz and his group then examined a number of climate influences and considered how long economic shocks related to climate would last. Computer systems were used to estimate the effects on each person's income in the area. Kotz's work proposes that economic changes over the next 25 years are likely to happen. He said cuts in greenhouse gases will only reduce the lost income by a small amount. But there are two different possibilities for 2050 and beyond. If the world works to reduce warming to 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial times, the economic impact would be 20% of global income. But if climate changes substantially more, the effect could be a 60% loss of income. Kotz said that means that people should not think the doomsday is already here and nothing can be done. The new study predicted a larger decrease in the world's income than a similar study in 2015 suggested. The study said the world's economy would shrink by 23% by 2100. Marshall Burke is a climate scientist at Stanford University who wrote the 2015 study. He said, "The new German study makes a lot of sense." Burke was not part of the recent study. He warned that he is not completely sure about some of the methods, but he agrees with the idea. Burke added, "The big picture is basically right." Francis Moore is an economist and teaches environmental studies at the University of California, Davis. Moore who also was not part of the study, said climate damage adds up over time. That is why fighting climate change today, even at a high cost, will have good results later. I'm Dan Friedel.
Studies show that military officials are increasingly deploying systems to interfere with aircraft navigation systems in conflict areas, but such tools can put other aircraft at risk. Airplanes depend on complex navigation systems to guide pilots and to warn of possible danger during a flight. Such systems are known as Global Navigation Satellite Systems, or GNSS. The most commonly used GNSS system is called GPS, which stands for Global Positioning System. The GPS system is owned by the American government and operated by the U.S. Space Force. The GPS system uses a series of satellites to send signals to receivers, which identify the exact positions of objects. The U.S. Space Force says it develops and operates all space and Earth-based activities related to the GPS system. A civilian version is available for people to use freely around the world. A military union leads the Galileo GNSS, while Russia operates a service called GLONASS. Systems have been developed to disrupt these GPS services, especially in areas of conflict. Military leaders and groups have deployed such tools to harm enemy aircraft operations. Industry experts say such efforts affect electronic systems and can lead to dangerous flight errors. There are two main methods used to disrupt GPS operations. One is called jamming. Jamming involves sending out radio signals within an area to overpower all other signals so that GPS receiver devices cannot effectively operate. The other method is called spoofing. This is when technology is used to trick a GPS receiver into estimating a false position. Incidents of jamming and spoofing have been identified in several conflict areas. These include around Ukraine, which is fighting Russia, and around Gaza, where Israel is fighting Hamas. The French news agency AFP reports that Hamas fighters in Gaza have been using jamming methods to block GPS signals used to guide Israeli drones operating there. In an effort to keep its drones flying in Gaza, Israel has been using a technology designed to resist jamming. The technology, called GPS Dome 2, was created by Israeli developer Infinidome. The company's products are designed to protect against jamming tools. They were deployed soon after Hamas's October 7th attacks in Israel that started the Gaza conflict. In addition to using anti-jamming tools to keep its own aircraft operating, Israel has also taken measures to disrupt the GPS of Hamas and other opponents, the news agency reported. Israel's army has admitted that days after the Hamas attacks, it moved to proactively disrupt GPS in order to carry out operational needs. Disruptions by Israel included both jamming and spoofing methods, AFP reported. In one example, an AFP reporter standing on a street in Jerusalem was shown on GPS to be near Cairo, Egypt. In another case, a reporter in the West Bank city of Jenin was listed on GPS as being at Beirut's airport in Lebanon. Since the start of the war in Ukraine, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, or EASA, has been warning that GNSS signal disruptions have intensified. In some cases, such disruptions can change a plane's path or even cause it to land at the wrong place, EASA said. The agency's acting chief, Luke Titgat, told AFP that GNSS systems are necessary to improve safety in increasingly crowded airspaces. But we have seen a sharp rise in attacks on these systems, which presents a safety risk, he said. Titgat suggested that aviation agencies should consider changing the current certification requirements for navigation and landing systems. Todd Humphreys and a team of researchers at the University of Texas at Austin examine GPS signals around the world. After October 7th, the team discovered spoofing activity that led some planes headed for Israel to disappear from GPS for a short period. Humphreys told AFP the examinations showed Israel appears to be engaging in GPS spoofing as a defensive measure. He noted the false GPS signals had tricked receivers around northern Israel into thinking they were at Beirut's airport.
Now, Brian Lynn joins me to talk more about his technology report. Hi, Brian. Good to have you here.
Of course, Ashley. Thank you for having me.
This week, you reported on how GPS signals are being disrupted as part of military operations in Ukraine and Gaza. Your report notes that such disruptions are becoming more common, but are not that easy to stop. Why is this?
Yes, so industry experts say this kind of activity, both jamming and spoofing of GPS signals, is quite difficult to block. One reason is that these disruptive technologies are already out there and can be quickly deployed by groups to areas where military operations are currently taking place. The report noted, for example, that Hamas fighters in Gaza have regularly used jamming tools to prevent Israeli drones from operating there. And this is why Israel started using a new technology product that aims to protect GPS signals around Gaza.
Are there currently any international efforts being discussed to try to deal with these problems?
GPS safety data. And they also identified a need for more technology solutions to fight the problem, as well as more specific training for airline pilots.
All right. Thanks again, Brian, for joining me, and thank you for that report.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ashley.
VOA Learning English has launched a new program for children. It is called Let's Learn English with Anna. The new course aims to teach children American English through asking and answering questions and experiencing fun situations. For more information, visit our website, learningenglish.voanews.com.
My name is Anna Mateo. My name is Andrew Smith.
And I'm Jill Robbins.
You're listening to the Lesson of the Day on the Learning English podcast. Welcome to the part of the show where we help you do more with our series, Let's Learn English. The series shows Ana Mateo in her work and life in Washington, D.C.
Being in Washington helps Ana learn about U.S. history. There are many memorials and monuments in the city that connect to important people and events in the country's past. As we mentioned in a previous lesson of the day, a memorial is something that pays respect to the memory of the lives of people who have died.
And a monument is a large structure, usually made out of stone, built to remind people of a famous person or a famous historical event. Lessons 25 and 26 of the series show Ana learning about U.S. history at the monuments and memorials.
Near the Lincoln Memorial, a man who is interested in U.S. history runs into Ana by accident. Let's listen.
Hello from Washington, D.C. This city has many monuments and memorials. Today, I am visiting the ones built in memory of our presidents, Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Roosevelt. I want to learn more about them. Hey, watch out!
Sorry, I did not see you.
You were not looking. You should be more careful.
I know I should be more careful, but this game is really fun.
What kind of game?
What kind of game do you think the man who bumped into Ana is playing? A video game? Let's find out.
What kind of game?
You have to find things that aren't really there.
How can you find things that aren't really there?
They're in your phone, see?
I see. It's like a scavenger hunt.
That's right.
I don't have time for games. I want to learn about U.S. presidents.
Then you should play this game. When you find an American symbol, you win points and a fun fact about a U.S. president.
I have time for this game.
To play this game, people use their phones to find information. To find the information, they must go to several places in the city. When they reach a particular place, for example, a memorial or monument, the phone will show them the information they want to find about U.S. history.
How can you find things that aren't really there?
They're in your phone, see?
I see. It's like a scavenger hunt.
That's right.
We call this kind of game, where you go to several places to find things that are hidden, a scavenger hunt. It can be a lot of fun to play.
And in nature, there are animals that are scavengers, such as vultures. These large birds eat animals that have died or been killed by other animals.
And the verb scavenge, that's spelled S-C-A-V-E-N-G-E, means to look for or collect things that have been left or that are not wanted.
We have another newer expression in English to describe an activity where people scavenge in large garbage containers called dumpsters. We call this dumpster diving.
That's right. I have never been dumpster diving, but I have heard about that. Now, let's listen again to what Ana says when the man bumps into her.
Hey, watch out!
Sorry, I did not see you.
You were not looking. You should be more careful.
I know I should be more careful, but this game is really fun.
Both Ana and the man use the modal should. It is common to use the modal should to give advice or suggest that something is a good thing to do. The tone of voice we use with the word should gives the advice a positive feeling, a neutral feeling, or a negative feeling of disapproval. Let's listen to 3 examples.
You were not looking. You should be more careful.
I know I should be more careful. Then you should play this game.
Did you hear how each example had a different feeling or effect? The last example had a more positive feeling of encouragement.
Then you should play this game.
The first example expressed disapproval.
You should be more careful.
And the next example had a neutral tone, not too positive and not too negative.
I know I should be more careful.
Remember that there's another way we use the modal should. We use it to express what we think will likely happen. Listen to this example.
The bus should be here in about 10 minutes.
The modal supposed to also shares the same 2 meanings as should. We use it to suggest correct behavior, or we use it to express what we think will likely happen. These 2 examples show the difference.
You're supposed to wash your hands before you cook.
The train is supposed to arrive at 3:30. You might hear people saying something different when they speak quickly. The train was supposed to arrive at 3:30, but it didn't. Here, a 2-syllable word, supposed, becomes more like 1 syllable, sposed.
I'm Andrew Smith, and you're listening to the Lesson of the Day on the Learning English podcast. On our website, you can download a lesson plan for Let's Learn English Lesson 25. It includes a game and other ways you can practice giving advice with the modal should. The lesson plan also includes a glossary of vocabulary from the show, as well as a quiz.
And remember that you can download a lesson plan for every episode of Let's Learn English.
Jill, there's one more modal we ought to mention from Lesson 25.
Yes, there is. We ought to mention the modal ought to.
Just like should and supposed to, ought to can suggest behavior or express the idea that something is likely to happen.
Listen to this example from Lesson 25 and see how the speaker uses the modal ought to.
What symbol are you looking for now?
I am looking for the bald eagle. That is 100 points. It should be near the Washington Monument.
This game is awesome.
You ought to buy the app right now. It's called Catch Americana.
Got it. Catch Americana. Thanks.
You can hear that the speaker makes a suggestion by using the modal ought to.
Because he is not speaking very quickly, he pronounces it like this.
You ought to buy the app right now.
You can hear him pronounce the letter T. But as we have explained in many previous episodes, remember that the pronunciation changes when we talk faster. Ought to changes to oughta. For example, listen to this short exchange between Jill and me.
Have you been to the new Spy Museum downtown?
No, have you?
Yeah, it's great. You ought to go.
Oughta. That makes me think of a line from a song by the American musician Billy Joel, where he says, "You oughta know by now."
Well, Andrew, I think we ought to bring this lesson of the day to a close. But first, let's ask our listeners a question. What game do you play on your phone? Write to us at learningenglish@voanews.com or answer in the comments on YouTube.
We should also tell our listeners that they can learn more on our website, learningenglish.voanews.com. They can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
Thanks for listening to the Learning English podcast. I'm Jill Robbins.
And I'm Andrew Smith.
Welcome to Learning English, a daily 30-minute program from the Voice of America. I'm Ashley Thompson.
And I'm Dan Novak. This program is designed for English learners, so we speak a little slower, and we use words and phrases especially written for people learning English.
Today, Anna Mateo and Dan Friedel tell us why small coffee growers in several countries are worried they may not be able to sell to Europe after new rules take effect. Brian Lynn presents this week's technology report. We close the show by hearing today's lesson of the day. But first, here are Anna and Dan.
Coffee growers in many countries are worried about a new European rule designed to prevent deforestation. Deforestation describes when developers cut down trees to make room for crops, buildings, or land where cattle can graze. The new rule goes into effect at the end of 2024. It covers products like coffee, cocoa, soy, palm oil, wood, rubber, and beef. The European Union says all of those products result in tree cutting. The United Nations says deforestation is the world's second leading cause of carbon emissions after the burning of fossil fuels. Large producers must show their products come from land where trees have not been cut down since 2020. Smaller producers must do the same, but will be permitted to sell their products until July 2025.
A report from the World Wildlife Fund showed that Europe's imports of products linked to forest clearing caused the second most deforestation in the world in 2017. That year, China was first. An expert said the new European rule could help prevent more deforestation and push farmers around the world to plant trees, vines, and grasses. Helen Belfield is a policy director at Global Canopy, a nonprofit organization based in Britain. It suggests businesses change their production methods that hurt the environment. She said the new EU rules could force governments to help farmers make changes. On the other hand, farmers could just sell to countries outside of the EU. The world's top coffee producers include Vietnam, Ethiopia, and Peru. Growers in those countries worry they will no longer be able to sell in Europe. The new EU rules could help coffee farmers like Le Van Tham of Vietnam, who has taken the environment into account. He first planted coffee in the Central Highlands area in 1995. At the time, he cleared land so he could grow as much coffee as possible. But in 2019, he changed his growing methods. Instead of using lots of fertilizers and pesticides, he started planting tamarind trees that add nutrients to the soil. He added black pepper vines and grass, which helps to keep the soil moist and prevents erosion. The changes qualified his coffee as organic, which opened new markets and made his coffee more valuable. He did not produce more, but his profits went up, he said. Vietnam hopes that more farmers will make changes, which will permit them to sell in Europe and maintain the nation's rank as the world's second-largest coffee producer. The news is not as good for those in Ethiopia and Peru. Orders for Ethiopian coffee are already falling, and Peru's farmers who are in the Amazon River area may not be able to provide information required by the EU. There will be winners and losers, Belfield said. Vietnam depends on Europe for 40% of its coffee sales. As soon as the new rules came out, the country began working to maintain its market share. Vietnamese officials worked with small farmers to make sure their land met the new EU requirements. In addition, it made a database showing where its coffee came from. Farmers like Tom got special certificates from international agencies that proved how his beans were grown. Tom said the extra work will be worth it because even if his costs are higher, he can get more money for his coffee. Otherwise, we will always be laborers, he said.
Small Vietnamese farmers still must get ready for the new rules. They will need technology to prove where their beans came from, and that their land is certified by the EU. They will also need to be sure the qualified beans are not mixed with banned beans. From the harvest to shipment, new systems must be put into place to prevent errors. Brazil is another big coffee-producing nation. Since it already sells a lot to Europe, experts say most of its products already meet EU requirements. But farmers in Peru and Ethiopia may need more time. Gizat Warku is head of the Ethiopian Coffee Exporters Association. He said collecting data about the land of millions of small farmers will be a problem. That requires a huge amount of resources, he said. Gizat said orders from Europe are already falling. Some coffee exporters are thinking about selling to the Middle East and China instead. Ethiopian coffee sells well in those places. These regulations are going to have a tremendous impact, Gizat said. I'm Anna Mateo.
And I'm Dan Friedel.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on Monday signed a law that bans children in the state under the age of 14 from having a social media account. The measure requires parental permission before 14 and 15-year-olds can sign up for personal social media accounts in Florida. Supporters say the bill protects children from possible online harm, including threats to mental health and privacy. Critics have said the law might violate the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment protection of free speech. Some opponents have said they think parents, not the government, should be the ones to decide which restrictions are best for their child. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, opposed the legislation, for example. Florida's legislature passed the law earlier this month. It was the second version of the measure. The first version, which passed Florida's legislature in February, would have completely banned children under age 16 from social media. DeSantis vetoed that version of the bill, saying he thought it was too restrictive of parental rights. But the governor's office worked with legislators to come up with a new measure he could support. The new law leaves it up to parents to decide whether their 16 and 17-year-olds can sign up for social media accounts. In a statement, DeSantis' measure is likely to face legal challenges in court. DeSantis noted that another bill he signed into law 2 years ago was recently struck down by a federal appeals court. That law banned employers from requiring training sessions that included discussions about race, diversity, and other issues. The appeals court ruled that such training methods violated the constitutional free speech rights of employers. The new law was guided through Florida's House of Representatives by Republican Speaker Paul Renner. At a bill signing ceremony at a school, Renner said a child whose brain is still developing doesn't have the ability to know that they're being sucked into these addictive technologies. He added, "Because of that, we have to step in for them." The bill does not name any specific social media service, but it states that it targets social media sites using tools to get users to stay online for long periods. The measure does not cover services that mainly provide email, messaging, or texting services. The law requires social media companies to permanently remove personal information collected from closed accounts, and it lets parents bring civil lawsuits against services failing to do so. Several U.S. states have considered similar legislation. In March 2023, Utah became the first to enact laws covering children's use of social media. Measures in Arkansas, Louisiana, Ohio, and Texas soon followed. Several other states are also developing new rules. The Arkansas law required parental consent for minors to create new social media accounts. A federal judge blocked the law in August. The judge ruled the legislation was likely unconstitutional. Florida has enacted additional measures aimed at protecting children from possible technological harms. Last year, it became the first state to strongly restrict phones in schools. The law requires all public schools in Florida to ban student cell phone use and block social media services during.
Lynn joins me now to talk more about his technology report. Hi, Brian. Thanks for being here.
Of course, Ashley. Thank you for having me.
In this week's report, you looked at a law just signed by Florida's governor that bans social media accounts for children under the age of 14. But experts have warned this kind of law can be difficult to enforce. What enforcement measures will be used?
Yes, some technology experts have predicted this particular law will be hard to enforce. A big reason for this is because it can be very difficult for social media companies to confirm the correct age of children signing up for accounts on the internet. So this is the main enforcement method. Tech companies will need to use third-party age verification systems to identify underage individuals. And any users in the state of Florida found to be under age 14 are to have those accounts closed by the services.
And what actions does the law permit against social media companies that do not effectively enforce the rules?
So the companies do face penalties if they disobey the law. It states, for example, that social media services that knowingly permit minors to have accounts can be punished with fines up to $50,000 per violation. And in addition, the law leaves the possibility open for parents to directly sue companies on behalf of their children if the accounts are not automatically removed. And in those lawsuits, parents can sue and receive up to $10,000 in damages if they...
Information, visit our website, learningenglish.voanews.com.
My name is Anna Mateo.
And my name is Jill Robbins.
And I'm Andrew Smith.
You're listening to Lesson of the Day on the Learning English podcast. Welcome to the part of the show where we help you do more with our series, Let's Learn English. The series shows Anna Mateo in her work and life in Washington, D.C.
In a recent Lesson of the Day on the Learning English podcast, Jill and I talked about people watching. It's something Anna enjoys doing on her lunch break at work. Here's Anna in Lesson 15 of the series.
Hello! People from all over the world come to Washington, D.C. When I'm at work, I love eating lunch outside. I like to watch people walking by. They all look very different. Today, my friend Ashley is eating lunch with me. Ashley, today the weather is beautiful, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Ooh, we have to return to work.
No, we have time. Let's people watch a little more.
Okay.
Anna enjoys noticing the differences and similarities between the people she sees walk by. Her friend Kiana likes to watch people too and joins her.
The weather is beautiful and people watching is fun.
I love people watching too.
Well, have a seat. It is fun to see how people are different or the same.
It is. For example, Anna, you are tall, but Ashley and I are short.
And Kiana, you and Ashley have brown eyes. I have blue eyes.
You two have black skin and I have dark skin.
Ashley, you have straight hair. Kiana and I have curly hair.
You have very curly hair, Anna.
These differences between people are easy to see. We can say that the differences are obvious, which means easy to see or understand. But other differences are more subtle. That's spelled S-U-B-T-L-E. But we do not pronounce the letter B in the word. Subtle describes something that is not immediately obvious or easy to notice.
As we were saying in a previous podcast, if you know a culture really well, then you might be able to notice subtle differences within that culture.
Like an American might be able to make a better guess about where a person is from in the U.S., or about their socioeconomic status based on the person's clothes or accent or maybe some other small details than a person who is not from the U.S.
True, the American might notice more small differences, but we still have to be careful not to judge other people too quickly. For example, a rich person and a poor person might wear almost the same kind of informal clothes, like jeans and a t-shirt.
Yep, that's right. I remember when I was working in a store, our manager reminded us that you can never be sure which customers have a lot of money. A millionaire can look just the same as somebody who has almost no money.
You're listening to Lesson of the Day on the Learning English podcast. Andrew, I noticed you're using some more advanced vocabulary today. Let's explain the term socioeconomic.
It generally refers to the combination of the amount of money you make, your education, and certain kinds of power you have. So, if you have a lot of education, plus a high income, plus a high position in business or government, your socioeconomic status is high. Status can refer to the importance and respect you have in your group or in society, such as your level within a hierarchy.
That's another advanced but useful word, hierarchy. That's spelled H-I-E-R-A-R-C-H-Y. A hierarchy is a system of organizing people into different levels of importance or power.
The military is probably the best example. There is a clear hierarchy from the generals at the top to the ordinary soldiers at the bottom, with different levels of officers in between.
Let's review the vocabulary we've explained. The words are obvious, subtle, socioeconomic, and hierarchy.
Obvious and subtle have opposite meanings.
And socioeconomic status can refer to one's position in the hierarchy of a society.
Jill, a minute ago you said that we have to be careful not to judge other people too quickly. I certainly agree. And that reminds me of another word we started to talk about in a previous Learning English podcast.
You mean the word stereotype?
I do. Could you explain a bit about this word?
Sure. A stereotype is a kind of oversimplified generalization about a group of people, based on a fixed image or idea about that group.
And when you say fixed, you mean unchanging.
Yes, stereotypes don't allow for much change. They assume that a group of people always have the same characteristics. And that's just one way they oversimplify or overgeneralize.
So, for example, if I said something like, Italians love to eat pasta, listen to opera, and watch soccer, that would be an obvious example of stereotyping.
Right, because while it's true that a lot of Italians do like soccer or eat pasta, there's probably millions of people in Italy who do not like to eat pasta or watch soccer.
Just like a lot of Americans do not like to eat hamburgers and hot dogs. After all, there are about 300 million people in the U.S. With that many people and people coming from all over the world to live in the U.S., there's quite a bit of cultural variety.
And this topic reminds me, there's an interesting talk our listeners can watch and listen to online by the writer Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. It's called The Danger of a Single Story. Adichie grew up in Nigeria, and she talks about how people in Western countries can have stereotypes about people from Africa, and how she herself sometimes oversimplified other groups of people.
So, if we only have a single story, or a stereotype, about other people, that means we are missing the complexity of individuals and the diversity within their culture. Jill, where can people find Adichie's talk online?
The website is TED.com, and that's spelled TED. There are a lot of talks there, and they are often called TED Talks. You can search for The Danger of a Single Story on the website, and you can also read a transcript of what she says.
I've just found it on my computer. Wow! It says her talk has been viewed over 34 million times.
Well, I thought it was interesting, and I guess a lot of other people do too.
Well, Jill, we've gone from Anna people watching at her lunch break to an inspiring talk by a writer from Nigeria. It's interesting how one thing leads to another.
And how one word can lead to another. Let's repeat a few key vocabulary words from today's podcast.
Good idea. I'll say one, then you say one.
Okay.
Obvious.
Subtle.
Socioeconomic.
Status.
Hierarchy.
Stereotype.
Fixed.
And how about inspiring? You said Adichie's talk on TED.com was inspiring.
That's right, I did. And inspiring means it gives you a strong, positive feeling and perhaps makes you want to do something good.
And we certainly hope our listeners are inspired to learn more with the series Let's Learn English and with the lesson of the day on the Learning English podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm Jill Robbins.
And I'm Andrew Smith.
Welcome to Learning English, a daily 30-minute program from the Voice of America. I'm Ashley Thompson.
And I'm Dan Novak. This program is designed for English learners, so we speak a little slower, and we use words and phrases especially written for people learning English.
Today, Brian Lin tells us why people in China are needing to work later in life. Anna Mateo presents this week's Health and Lifestyle Report. She looks at new research on the risks of drinking alcohol. Finally, we hear today's lesson of the day from Andrew Smith and Jill Robbins. But first,
China's economic expansion has been driven partly by millions of people who left their rural homes to work in cities and factories. But many of these workers are aging and they are finding it difficult to retire in their home communities because government assistance can be low. This issue is linked to the way China's social security system works. People living in Chinese cities earn higher retirement payments than those living in rural areas. People who choose to go to the city to work are known as rural migrants. Reporters from Reuters recently explored retirement or pension payments in China. The news agency spoke with rural migrant workers, researchers, economists, and a government advisor. Reuters reported that about 100 million rural migrants will near retirement age over the next 10 years. If these people decide to retire and return to their homes, they could earn as little as $17 per month. The World Bank defines extreme poverty as living on less than $2.15 per day. One example is 67-year-old Hu Dexi. He and his wife sold homemade rolls for 30 years on the streets in the city of Xi'an. Hu told Reuters he is ready to retire, but he said he and his wife are still working to earn the amount of money they say they need. The couple now lives outside of Beijing, where they both work as cleaners in a shopping center, earning $552 each a month. No one can look after us, Hu told Reuters. He explained that he does not think entering retirement is possible at the moment. I don't want to be a burden on my 2 children, and our country isn't giving us a penny. Many rural migrants in China face similar situations. They do not have the skills for high-paying jobs and often cannot depend on children for support. China has aimed to increase economic growth and productivity with continued industrial expansion. But critics argue that such a system often does not serve retirees well. In addition, China's social security system is not prepared for the large number of people nearing retirement age. The Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, CASS, has estimated the nation's pension system could completely run out of money by 2035. CASS also estimated the level of healthcare assistance to city workers was in some cases about 4 times greater than for those in rural areas. A recent news article appearing in the Chinese Cadre Tribune, a Communist Party publication, reported that more than 16% of rural people older than 60 were unhealthy. This compared to 10% in cities. Kai Fong, an economist for CASS and a former central bank advisor, wrote the story. China has introduced private retirement programs. It has also provided financial assistance to provinces that have pension budget deficits. Other countries have tried to build up pensions by increasing the retirement age, but China's is among the lowest in the world, age 60 for men and between 50 and 55 for women. Chinese officials have said the government plans to raise the retirement age, but has not said when that will happen. Official Chinese government records show about 94 million working people were older than 60 in 2022. This group represents about 13% of working people. It has increased from about 9% of working people in 2020. That share is currently lower than some other Asian countries, including Japan and South Korea, but it is set to rise sharply as 300 million more Chinese reach their 60s over the next 10 years. About 1/3 of those people are rural migrants, Reuters reports. I'm Brian Lynn.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health and Lifestyle Report. Alcohol.
is often consumed at social gatherings, from happy hours after work to birthday parties on the weekend. Drinking some alcohol is normal and believed to be good for heart health. However, new research may have put an end to that idea. Dr. Timothy Namey directs the Canadian Institute for Substance Use Research at the University of Victoria. He said drinking less is a great way to be healthier. Guidelines or advice for drinking alcohol differ greatly from country to country. But overall, the advice has been moving toward drinking less. Britain, France, Denmark, Holland, and Australia recently reviewed new evidence and lowered the suggested amount of alcohol consumption. Ireland went further than most. It will require cancer warning descriptions on alcohol starting in 2026. Karina Ferrari Borges is an advisor for alcohol at the World Health Organization Office for Europe. She said scientists see evidence linking alcohol to over 200 health conditions, including cancers, cardiovascular diseases, and injuries. Overall, people may have already been moving toward drinking less alcohol. Social calendar events called Dry January and Sober October are celebrated with non-alcoholic drinks. Dry means no alcohol, and a sober person is not affected by alcohol. People my age are way more accepting of it, said Tessa Weber. The 28-year-old from Austin, Texas, said she stopped drinking for Dry January after seeing how alcohol increased her anxiety. She liked the results: better sleep, more energy, and has stuck with it. The idea that alcohol can be heart-friendly came from imperfect studies comparing groups of people by how much they drink. Usually, alcohol consumption was measured at one point in time, and none of them compare drinkers and non-drinkers. As a result, these studies could not prove cause and effect. People who report drinking an average amount of alcohol usually have higher income, education, and better health care. It turns out that when you adjust for those things, the benefits tend to disappear, Dr. Namey said. Most studies also did not include younger people, and almost half of the people who die from alcohol-related causes die before the age of 50. If you're studying people who survived into middle age, didn't quit drinking because of a problem, and didn't become a heavy drinker, that's a very select group, Namey said. It creates an appearance of a benefit for moderate drinkers. Other studies challenge the idea that alcohol has benefits. These studies compare people with a certain gene variant that makes it unpleasant to drink to people without this gene variant. People with this gene tend to drink very little or not at all. One of these studies found people with the gene variant have a lower risk of heart disease. This may supply more proof that alcohol does not protect people from heart problems. So how many alcoholic drinks can people safely have every day? That depends. Drinking alcohol raises the risk of several kinds of cancer, including colon, liver, breast, mouth, and throat. Alcohol breaks down in the body into a substance called acetaldehyde. This substance can damage your cells and stop them from repairing themselves. That creates the conditions for cancer to grow. Thousands of U.S. deaths per year could be prevented if people follow the U.S. government's guidelines. They advise men to limit themselves to 2 drinks or fewer per day, and women to 1 drink or fewer per day, NAMI said. 1 drink is the equivalent of about 1 can of beer, a glass of wine, or a very small glass of hard alcohol. NAMI served on an advisory committee. That committee wanted to lower the guideline for men to 1 drink per day. However, that advice was rejected when the federal guideline came out in 2020. The simple message that's best supported by the evidence is that if you drink, less is better when it comes to health, NAMI said. On its website, the National Institutes of Health says some people should not consume alcohol at all. The agency says to avoid alcohol completely if you are taking medications that interact with alcohol, having a medical condition that can be made worse by drinking, under the age of 21, the minimum legal drinking age in the U.S., recovering from alcohol use disorder, or unable to control the amount you drink, pregnant, or might become
Anna Mateo with this week's Health and Lifestyle Report. Anna is here now to talk more about the story. Hi, Anna. Good to speak with you.
Hi, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
So, what has been a trend in alcohol consumption that you can tell us about?
More people celebrate alcohol-free calendar events like Dry January and Sober October. Also, bars and restaurants now offer more non-alcoholic drink choices.
And what does the word dry mean in this case?
Well, at a dry event, alcohol is not served. And if someone commits to Dry January, for example, they do not drink any alcohol for the whole month.
It used to be widely believed and even reported in the media that alcohol can be good for the heart. What is the thinking now?
Past studies on alcohol led to the misconception that alcohol is good for the heart. But researchers have gone over these studies and now consider them to be flawed.
Interesting. I guess it's a good thing I prefer non-alcoholic beer then.
Yes, it is. And there are many non-alcoholic beer options these days that are quite tasty. You know, I quit drinking alcohol back in 2019 after I interviewed a neuroscientist who told me of the dangers. So I decided to quit for a year and I just never went back. My sleep, my energy, and my ability to focus all improved.
Thanks so much for your report today, Anna, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Ashley.
VOA Learning English has launched a new program for children. It is called Let's Learn English with Anna. The new course aims to teach children American English through asking and answering questions and experiencing fun situations. For more information, visit our website, learningenglish.voanews.com.
research has shown that a majority of American teachers report feeling stressed and unhappy at work. And a recent study by Brown University and the University of Albany found that reduced job happiness among teachers is linked to their sense of autonomy in their classroom. Teachers with autonomy are given the chance to make decisions and plans on their own. On tomorrow's Education Report, Dan Novak looks at one top-performing public school in the state of Florida that has chosen to give its teachers more autonomy. Listen tomorrow for that report.
My name is Anna Mateo.
My name is Andrew Smith.
And I'm Jill Robbins.
You're listening to the Lesson of the Day on the Learning English podcast. Welcome to the part of the show where we help you do more with our series, Let's Learn English. The series shows Anna Mateo in her work and life in Washington, D.C.
In lessons 32 and 33 of the series, Anna has a new TV show for children. In the show, there is a computer named Mindy that helps Anna travel to different places. But Mindy sometimes has trouble sending Anna to the correct place.
Anna loves baseball, and she wants to travel to a ballpark to talk about the sport of baseball. But Mindy has sent Anna to wrong places, including the ocean. Let's see if Mindy can fix the problem.
Last time on the time-traveling treehouse, Anna was lost. Really lost. She wants to learn about baseball, but her computer Mindy sent her to many wrong places.
Mindy, help me. I am in the ocean with a shark.
I will try one more time, Anna.
Please try harder, Mindy. Now where am I? I'm at a playground with a baseball field. Yes! I can teach children about baseball here. Mindy, it took you a long time, but you did it!
Thanks, Anna. Give me a call when you find the answer.
Okay.
Now Anna can explain how to play baseball, a sport that is popular in the United States.
To play baseball, you really only need a bat, a ball, and a glove. Each team has many players. Pitchers pitch the ball. Catchers catch the ball. Batters bat the ball. Runners run the bases. Fielders field the ball.
In baseball, bases are special places on the field. And to bat means to hit the ball with a specially shaped piece of wood or metal called a bat. To pitch means to throw the ball to the batter. The throw itself is called the pitch.
Have you noticed how the same word can work in different ways? The word bat can be either a verb or a noun. To bat means to hit, and a bat is the piece of wood or metal.
And the batter is the person who holds the bat and tries to bat the ball.
For some words in English, we can take the noun or verb form and add the ending er, pronounced to describe the person or agent doing the activity. Here are several examples.
Run, runner.
Work, worker.
Dance, dancer.
Swim, swimmer.
Think, thinker.
Bank, banker.
Pitch, pitcher.
In baseball, the pitcher is the person who throws the ball to the batter. To pitch is the verb, while the pitch is the noun, the name for the throw itself, from pitcher to batter.
When you are learning new words in English, it is helpful to know how the words can be used in different forms, like to pitch, the pitch, and pitcher.
Let's take another example using the verb create. To create means to make something new and original.
A creator is someone who creates, just like a pitcher is someone who pitches.
But here's where English spelling might drive you crazy. Words like pitcher, batter, runner, and dancer all end with the letters er. But creator ends with the letters or. But it still sounds like the sound er, creator.
How else can the word create change? Well, we can use the noun form, creation, the adjective creative, or the adverb creatively.
To repeat the forms, that's create, creator, creation, creative, creatively.
So remember, when you learn a new word in English, be sure to check the dictionary to learn all the forms of the word.
I'm Jill Robbins, and you're listening to the Learning English podcast. Before we move on, we should say one more thing about baseball. We have many idiomatic expressions in English that come from the sport, such as hit a home run or be out in left field.
If you want to learn more about these, enter the following words in a search on the internet. Words and Their Stories, VOA, baseball.
Let's repeat that. The search terms are Words and Their Stories, VOA, for Voice of America, and baseball. That will help you find a VOA Learning English article that explains all of the baseball expressions and gives more information about the sport.
After Anna's computer, Mindy, brought her back to the right place, Anna was able to finish teaching about baseball. And then she asks Mindy to return her to what she calls her treehouse, which, in this scene, is really a room at the office.
Mindy, we found the answer. It's time to return to the treehouse.
Good job. That was fast.
The end.
Good job, Anna. You know, I still don't like children's shows, but I like this children's show.
In American culture, we often say positive, supportive things to people we work with. We call these statements compliments.
An easy compliment to say is, good job.
Good job. That was fast.
Good job, Anna.
Here are some other compliments we commonly say.
That was thoughtful of you. Thanks.
You are so helpful. I really appreciate it.
It's great having you on our team.
Way to go. Nice job.
I really like what you've done here, Andrew.
Well, thank you. Now, here's something our listeners can do. Try to compliment someone you know in English. Then, you can write to us and tell us about it at learningenglish@voanews.com.
And while Andrew and I don't need compliments, we do like to hear your comments and what you think about the lesson of the day on the Learning English podcast.
Remember that you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Thanks for listening to the lesson of the day on the Learning English podcast. I'm Andrew Smith.
And I'm Dr. Jill.
Robbins. But first, here is Mario Ritter Jr.
The Roman Catholic Church has declared its opposition to sex change operations and surrogacy. The Vatican said those activities violate human dignity. It compared them to abortion and euthanasia, saying they reject God's plan for human life. The Vatican issued a 20-page declaration called Infinite Dignity. The document took 5 years to produce. It came 4 months after conservatives reacted to Pope Francis's support for same-sex partners. Supporters of gender theory say that gender is more complex than male and female. They say a person's sex depends on more than sexual qualities that can be seen. In the document, the Vatican repeats its rejection of gender theory, or the idea that a person's gender can be changed. It says God created man and woman as biologically different, separate beings, and said people must not change that plan or try to make oneself God. It follows that any sex change intervention, as a rule, risks threatening the unique dignity the person has received from the moment of conception, the document says. It notes the difference between gender-changing surgeries, which it rejects, and medical operations to correct genital abnormalities that are present at birth or that develop later. It says such a medical procedure would not constitute a sex change. Supporters for LGBTQ+ Catholics criticized the document as outdated and harmful. They warned it could lead to violence and discrimination against transgendered people. In the United States, Republican-led legislatures are considering bills to restrict sex change operations on children. Francis DeBernardo is with the New Ways Ministry, which supports LGBTQ+ Catholics. He said, as the document talks about respect, honor, and love for human life, it does not apply this principle to gender-diverse people. The Vatican also declared opposition to surrogacy, the practice of implanting a fertilized egg in a woman to carry a fetus for someone else, usually for money. The document calls the practice deplorable, saying it violates the dignity of the woman and the child based on the exploitation of situations of the mother's material needs. It quotes Pope Francis as saying, "A child is always a gift, and never the basis of a commercial contract. Consequently, I express my hope for an effort by the international community to prohibit this practice universally. The document restates the well-known Catholic position in opposition to abortion, a medical operation to end a pregnancy, and assisted suicide or euthanasia. Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez said in a statement that Pope Francis approved the document after requesting that it also include poverty, the situation of migrants, violence against women, human trafficking, war, and other themes.
America's best-selling vehicle has not changed during the past 42 years. And some people might be surprised to learn that the top seller is not a car, but a truck. It is the Ford F-150. The American automaker says a new F-150 series pickup rolls off the manufacturing line at its Dearborn, Michigan truck factory every 53 seconds. John Emmert is the general manager of Ford North America Trucks. He noted to VOA News the F-150 has also been the best-selling truck in the United States for 47 years. One of the reasons the Ford pickup has stayed on top for so long is that the vehicle has remained popular from one generation to the next. One example of this is Vo Adams, a city employee in Sterling Heights, Michigan. He said his father-in-law first introduced him to the Ford 150, and Adams has liked the truck so much that he just got his second one. I'm just going to stick with the truck because I bought a house and I've got to move furniture, got to do yard work, so I needed it, Adams told VOA. He said he likes everything about the truck inside and out. I have one with a big touch screen, which is amazing. I'm a tech guy, so that's great, Adams added. Ford officials say they believe the vehicle's success is linked to the company's ongoing innovation. Emmert said Ford tries to stay in contact with buyers through market research and other methods. We take all that intelligence and we develop vehicles, the F-150, to serve their needs at every possible turn. The first version of the Ford 150 was created in 1948. Ford was the first car maker to design a pickup truck for normal citizens instead of just for business use, said Kevin Justema. He is past president of the Washington Auto Press Association and leads CarEd, a website that helps buyers decide which vehicle best meets their needs. The one product Ford seems to always put some of their technology leadership into is the F-Series for consumers, and that goes all the way up to today, Justema said. He added another reason the F-150 is so popular is because Ford offers several options designed to fit specific consumer needs. These include different kinds of engines and larger spaces inside vehicles. You need people to build vehicles. If you look at all the technology that's coming out, it's really about a collaborative space, said Corey Williams. He is the manager of Ford's Dearborn truck factory. Williams noted that every workstation has its own computer that helps employees design the vehicles and control quality on the manufacturing line. Williams said there are several reasons he thinks consumers keep coming back year after year after year. It's the technologies, it's the interior, You're getting into the interior and it's like a luxury vehicle, Williams says. You forget that you're in a truck. Some industry experts admit one of the less desirable things about the F-150 is its high gas usage. But many Americans do not seem to mind. Tens of millions of the vehicles have been sold since the 1940s. In 2023, 750,789 F-150s were sold in the U.S. But for people worried about the gas issue, Ford is now selling an all-electric Ford F-150 Lightning pickup. I'm Brian Lynn.
Some of the deadliest diseases to infect humans have come from pathogens that jumped from animals to people. The virus that causes AIDS, for example, came from chimpanzees. And many experts believe the virus that caused the COVID-19 pandemic came from bats. But as a new study shows, this disease exchange has not been just from animals to humans. In fact, research of all the publicly available viral genome sequences produced a surprising result. Humans. The remaining 21% involved humans. Of those, 64% were human-to-animal transmissions. 36% were animal-to-human transmissions. Scientists call the human-to-animal transmission anthropognosis. Animal-to-human transmission is called zoonosis. The animals affected by anthropognosis included pets like cats and dogs, domesticated animals like pigs, horses, and cattle, birds such as chickens and ducks, primates such as chimpanzees, gorillas, and howler monkeys, and other wild animals like raccoons and the African soft-furred mouse. Wild animals were more likely to experience human-to-animal transmission than the other way around. The study represents humans' large impact on the environment and the animals around us, said Cedric Tan. He is a doctoral student in biology at the University College London Genetics Institute. He was a lead writer of the study, which appeared recently in the publication Nature Ecology and Evolution. People and animals carry many microbes that can jump to another species through close contact. The study looked at viral transmissions involving all the vertebrate groups: mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. Viruses go between species in the same ways viruses are transmitted between humans, Tan said. That includes direct contact with infected fluids or getting bitten by other species, amongst others. But before the virus enters a different species, it must either have the biological toolkit or acquire host-specific adaptations to enter the cells of the new host species and exploit their resources, Tan added. Over thousands of years, pandemics that have killed millions of people have been caused by pathogens like viruses, bacteria, and fungi that crossed over to people from animals. Francois Ballou is director of the University College London Genetics Institute and one of the study's co-writers. He said a large majority of pathogens in humans came from animals at some point in time. The current biggest threat is probably bird flu H5N1, which is circulating in wild birds, he said. The main reason recent pathogen jumps can be so harmful is because the population of host species has no pre-existing immunity to the new disease, he added. In the 14th century, the bacterial disease bubonic plague killed millions of people in Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa. It was caused by a bacteria normally found in wild rodents. And present-day diseases like the Ebola virus similarly came from animals. Most species-to-species transmissions are of little threat, Bolu added. In most cases, such infections lead nowhere, as the virus is poorly adapted and there is no onward
Dan Novak is here now to talk more about today's health and lifestyle report. Welcome, Dan.
Hi, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
So in your report, you mentioned zoonosis and anthropognosis. Can you explain again what these two terms mean?
So anthropognosis is when a disease jumps from humans to animals. Zoonosis is when it jumps from animals to humans.
And it turns out that anthropognosis is much more common, correct?
That's right. That might be a bit surprising just because there's a lot of attention on diseases that came from animals like AIDS or Ebola or even COVID. We forget that humans spread diseases to animals just like animals spread diseases to us. But I was surprised to learn just how more common human-to-animal spread is.
Why can animal-to-human transmission be so harmful?
Well, animals that carry a disease have that pre-existing immunity to the disease. But when it jumps to humans, it's a completely new pathogen to the human body. You saw that with COVID, which is thought to have come from bats. It works the other way around as well. Diseases that humans have immunity to, animals do not.
What are some examples of anthropognosis?
There are several. Swine flu, norovirus, COVID, tuberculosis, among others, have all been found to have spread from humans to animals. Just like viruses between people, they are spread through close contact. So these diseases are often spread to pets or domesticated animals like pigs or horses.
Well, thanks for answering those questions, Dan, and thank you for that report.
You're welcome, Ashley.
VOA Learning English has launched a new program for children. It is called Let's Learn English with Anna. The new course aims to teach children American English through asking and answering questions and experiencing fun situations. For more information, visit our website, learningenglish.voanews.com.
My name is Anna Mateo.
And my name is Jill Robbins.
And I'm Andrew Smith.
You're listening to the lesson of the day on the Learning English podcast. Welcome to the part of the show where we help you do more with our series, Let's Learn English. This series shows Anna Mateo in her work and life in Washington, D.C.
In Lesson 18, Anna tries something new at work, reading the news. Her boss, Miss Weaver, is coaching her on how a professional journalist should read. She wants Anna to give the facts without showing any emotion.
But we all know Anna. It's hard for her to do that because she becomes so excited about each story she reads. Let's hear some of the lesson.
Hello from Washington, D.C. Today at work, I am reading the news for the first time. I am really nervous, but my boss, Ms. Weaver, is here to help me.
Now, Anna, remember, when we read the news, we are always reading facts. We never show our feelings.
Sure thing, Ms. Weaver.
Great. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Let's try the first story.
Hello, and welcome to The News. A new book is very popular with children and families. This is it. It is about a lost duckling. The duck's mother cannot find him.
Stop. Anna, when you say the words duck and duckling, you look really sad.
I do?
Yes. Sad is a feeling.
Sad is not a fact. Sorry. Let me try again.
I see. Ms. Weaver is trying to teach Anna to read objectively. That means to tell the facts without adding your own feelings. Anna shows her feelings both in her face and in her voice.
Andrew, you know, our listeners might think the opposite of the adjective objective is subjective. In some cases, that's true. But there's another word we use when we talk about reporting news. When someone presents the news in a way that makes it seem worse or more shocking than it really is, we call it sensationalist.
Subjective means we show our personal feelings or opinions about something. When we do that with the news and make everything seem terrible, you would call it sensationalist. Now I see why Ms. Weaver wants Anna to read the news objectively.
Yes, we've all seen what happens when the news is sensationalized. People get worried. So Anna gives it another try. Let's listen and see if she can do it better the next time.
Okay, she's trying again. And go.
Hello, and welcome to The News. A new book is very popular with children and families. This is it. It is about a lost duckling. The duck's mother cannot find him, but a family gives him a home.
Stop, Anna. You are doing it again.
This story is very sad.
Well, that didn't go so well. Did you notice that Anna changed the way she said one word, him? The second time she read it, listen to that again.
The duck's mother cannot find him.
I think that's because she's feeling so strongly about the story. But we hear a shorter form of pronouns quite often in American English.
One example of shorter forms is that phrase we use to encourage someone trying something new. Go get 'em. Here, M is a short form of them. But we never shorten me, it, or us because those words are already short.
If I was in the studio with Anna, I'd tell her, go get 'em, when she tries reading the news again. Maybe she can get it right the third time. Let's find out if Miss Weaver gives her another chance on a different story.
I have an idea. Let's read the second story. She's reading the second story, and go.
Okay, let's try the first story.
She's reading the second story.
Hello, and welcome to The News. In Indiana, a grandmother is the first 80-year-old woman to win the Race Car 500. That is awesome.
Stop. Stop. Anna, please. No feelings.
Right. But it is awesome that an 80-year-old grandmother wins a car race.
Just the facts, Anna.
Right. Hello, and welcome.